This is Eric Campbell. You can find me at erichcampbell.com.
This is Brian Walker with Image Armor Pretreatment and Inks.
Johnny Shell with SGIA.
Scott Fresner with T-Biz and Network International.
And you're listening to Two Regular Guys
Podcast
Hosted by Terri Combs
and Aaron Montgomery. Anything but regular, nothing but extraordinary.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. It's Friday, August 23rd, 2019. I'm Terri Combs, and you can find me at equipmentzone.com and at terricombs.com.
And I'm Aaron Montgomery, and you can find me over at aaronmontgomery.info. Today, we're going to welcome in Lisa Shaw back to our show. We're excited to have her back to talk the lingo of machine embroidery, as well as our embroidery guru extraordinaire, Erich Campbell, will be actually joining us. I'm actually going to step out during the interview and let you and Erich handle it and be the man behind the scenes here, because we've certainly had a little struggle with the technical stuff this morning, but we're going to get it. We're going to make it happen.
Fingers crossed on, on everybody hearing us and so on.
Yeah, so appreciate you guys' patience this morning as we get started a little bit late here today, but no big deal. We're going to make it happen. Good stuff. And like I said, we've got Erich along for the ride too, so he always gets it together for us, Terri. And yeah, you always just kind of go with the flow. So I love that about you.
I do indeed.
Yes. All right. Well, what new stuff do you got there, Terri?
Hey, yes, I was talking to Josh over at the ISS show, soon to be the Impressions Expo, and I was filling out Terri's big book of travel for 2020.
Yeah,
and I'm like, Josh, I need to schedule that Gulf Coast show that used to be Nashville, and he said they do have a date and they have a location, so it's going
Sweet.
to be June 18th through 20th, and it's going to be in Baton Rouge. So
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, nice.
Exactly. So June in Baton Rouge, I'm thinking no humidity. I
told my wife here in St. Louis the other day that I'm just tired of sweating right now. Being a Phoenix guy my whole life, and then moving here to St. Louis about 9 years ago, I'm just tired of sweating. But anyways,
we have had a little bit of heat though. We were 113 just the other day. It's Hey, we're dropping down though. I think it's only going to be 104 today. So, but hey, I'm headed to Chicago. So
there you go.
This afternoon for yet another screen printing class with our friends at Atlas Screen Supply. So.
Excellent. Well, that'll be a lot of fun, and you can come enjoy some humidity with the rest of us. So.
Exactly right.
What else, Terri? What else do you got?
Well, I was speaking with Jay Bassell last night, and as you know, we've discussed with him a couple of times his style guide, the roadmap to better branding, and it's virtually done. All that's happening is a little proofreading, and I am one of his proofreaders. So
all right.
Hopefully I'll be able to peruse that on my flight to Chicago late this afternoon, and he's going to be ready to go with it. And he wants to chat with both of us about that in the coming days, Aaron. Excellent.
Well, I am ready to chat with him. I've got a whole bunch of stuff set up since the last time we talked to him about it.
Exactly.
So good stuff going on there. So Terri, since most of the year, about I would say 75% of the year, you get to like throw stones about the weather there in Phoenix. Right. I'm going to throw one back at you here from our good friend Christine Shreve. Said we barely got above 70 yesterday in northern Michigan. It was great. So, this is the time, folks, if you want to get back at Terri for all of his discussions about the beautiful weather when it's January and we're buried in snow. So
here's your shot.
Now's the time. But
right.
Good stuff there. Thanks to all the regulators joining us here this morning. We got lots of people checking in already, and appreciate all that. And let's see. Carolyn Kegel says, make cookies in your car today, or maybe a chicken, or boil an egg on the sidewalk there, Terri. There
you go. I'm liking that roast chicken in my truck. That'd smell wonderful on my drive.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. Well, good stuff. So anyways, I had a quick news item there. I've got some things going on both sides here. So Nate Lieber, good friend of ours, he's been on the show sent us an email and said he's hosting a super informal meetup at the Columbus NBM show. It's going to be on Friday, September 13th at 4:30 p.m. Terry, are you going to be out in Columbus?
I will be there indeed.
Okay, so Friday, September 13th, 4:30 p.m. after the exhibit hall closes, it will be at the Char Bar, which is straight across High Street from the convention center and is famous for their Long Island iced teas. So I would encourage you guys to go and check that out and go over there and hang out with Nate and talk shop. And this is like this is a two regular guys type event, Terry. I mean, this is how our show really started, was
exactly
was through this kind of an event. So I will not be there, but Terry will hopefully be able to partake over there. And
that's probably going to overlap with the NBM event. They usually do a little get together, but more like 5:30 at a nearby hotel. But we'll possibly do both.
Very nice. Well, get over there and enjoy one for me. But yeah, if you guys are going to be at the Columbus NBM event, please make sure to check that out. If anybody needs to connect with Nate for any reason, we can be the intermediary there. So just reach out to us and let us know. So Terry, we've definitely had some technical difficulties happening in the background. So that's why I was a little scattered.
Right.
Two things going on here. So we're going to make this work, though. Obviously, we've got Eric, our embroidery guru, here with us. So he's going to fill in. I don't know if we call him Lisa or how we're going to do that, but we'll figure this out. Before we get there, though, I did want to hit a couple of regulators' comments here. As noted, Jay Bissell says, thanks for the shout out. Let's do this. So there we go. High five, Jay. Let's do this. I'm right there with you. And then Todd Downing said, I've spent more time cleaning our pool than being in it. We have two types of weather in the Chicago area where Todd's at. He's not exactly in Chicago, but near there. July and winter.
That's like us. We have summer. We have Uber summer, which we are in now, and then we have summer.
Jorita says hot in Austin too. So everybody's dealing with some interesting weather here. We had our first day under 100 yesterday in about 2 weeks. So San Antonio area. So there you go. So
speaking of humidity.
Yeah, definitely. So you know what? Let's do this. Let's bring Eric in here real quick, Terry, and 3, 2, 1. The Erich Campbell standing in for Lisa today. We're going to get to this interview here in a second. But Eric, we needed to get the weather report from Albuquerque, New Mexico as well.
You know, it's not too bad, though. What I will say is, for some reason, we finally got our monsoons back, which is great. So we're not burning to death. But at the same time, humidity, not a fan. Not a fan, being a desert kid. Not good with everything being rainy. So all you people who are out in humid places, I know, spent a lot of time in Atlanta in the summer. I'm sorry. Don't do that. So we're doing fine today. I mean, we still got up to 100, but I know everybody goes, it's a dry heat. No, seriously, that matters.
It's a dry heat till you get to 115. Then it's just hot.
No, that's true. No, you still can't go outside, but you sweat slightly less. And shade matters here. That's the thing. Anywhere else where it's wet, you guys know shade doesn't matter at all. Here, shade actually matters. So you can try and get out of it.
That's like when you go to the grocery store or the shopping mall or something. The cars aren't parked by the front door like at most places. They're here in Phoenix anyway. That there are a couple of scraggly trees, and all the cars are clustered around them.
Exactly.
No matter where they are in the parking lot.
That's New Mexico too, guys.
That's hilarious. I'll have to find it. I remember when I lived in Arizona, I remember seeing a cartoon of parking, mall parking lots in every place else. Like Terry said, all the cars are like piled up at the front. Right. Mall parking lots in Phoenix, like every car parked around this one tiny little scraggly tree, like Terry mentioned. So I'll find that cartoon and share it. I think that's a good one. All right, good stuff. Thanks you guys for checking in, and good stuff here. Michelle says Colorado has 4 seasons. I love it here. So good stuff.
Yeah,
All those seasons are
good.
on TV. I don't know what the big deal is.
Nice. All right. Hey, so Lisa, if you're still listening in and can hear us, I know she kind of bailed out, but I'm happy to give it another try. We could do it. I think I see her kind of trying to check back in here, restarting. I hope I just find where that's going, but we'll give it a shot. That's what is great about live.
Worst coming to
video.
worst, folks. I mean, Lisa is definitely better to look at than I am on the feed. I do know some embroidery. I will try my best. So anybody who's here who doesn't know, I've done a little bit. So I'll talk about stitchy stuff and confuse the heck out of these two for a minute.
Right. Well, hey, in the meantime, we want to thank all of our regular listeners, the regulators, and any new listeners tuning in today. If you have an idea for a future show, go to our contact us page at 2 regularguys.com, or reach out to us on social media. We're everywhere as 2 Regular Guys. And if you're catching the live video via Facebook, please jump in and participate. We may need some extra help today. And with that, let's hear a word from our gold sponsor.
All right. Apparently we've got no audio here, so it's
Is that kind of day. How about this, guys? Since I can speak for Brilliance a bit, I'm going to jump in and do a cold read. So this is what I'm going to do. We want to thank our sponsor in Brilliance, our gold sponsor. And what I'd love to get you guys all in the know about, and we're actually sending out a full newsletter for all of our people who are subscribed, is that our latest update is fully out there and is free for all continual users. You can jump in at embrilliance.com/downloads and get the newest update. And that includes everything from fully redigitized fonts, which I had a little bit to do with, and anything you can imagine that we've had in the beta, all the great features with the object-based font stuff, the enveloping, the baseline improvements, all of that stuff, including a ton of stuff that's for the whole platform, all coming out of the newest update and is available now. So definitely come on out. Check it out at embrilliance.com/downloads if you already have it. And if not, just go to embrilliance.com and see the difference. Software with no dongles, which we're going to talk a little bit about later today. And absolutely well worth it to check out while we're on sale. We've got that code 2RG that you can enter at embrilliance.com/store for 10% off your entire purchase. And while we're on sale, great time to get in on the new update and see all of the awesome new features. And like I said, be watching for that post we're sending out and that newsletter. If you're not on the list, get on it now. There are some cool free designs that are coming out with that everybody is going to love to play with that have to do with these new features. So yeah, everybody go and check it out at embrilliance.com, and pardon us on the incursion of Studio Gremlins, which we have from Christine Shreve in the commentary, but we're happy to have Embrilliance as a sponsor. And so thank you to Brighton Leap, and check it out, guys.
Although Brighton Leap is our gold sponsor, we still have other sponsorship opportunities available, and you can check out the details at 2 regularguys.com/sponsorship.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff there. And the podcast listeners won't even know that just happened. So you'll have to ask what happened if you're listening to the podcast.
They're going to miss out on that brilliant ad lib.
The podcast
it's
folks,
fantastic.
Podcast folks get the clean and sanitized version of the program.
I will be working on some editing today. So, but Carolyn did mention, if you want, I can patch in and sing a number for you all. And Marshall Atkinson tuning in says regular listeners already know the audio script by heart. So good stuff there. And Christine says, what did you guys do? You must have angered the techno gremlins at some point. Yes, apparently I need to change how I'm living. I've tried to stop making fun of Terri. I don't understand.
It must be something else.
Maybe I need to make fun of Terri more. Maybe that. No, okay.
I'm definitely right about now. I'm ready to swing the chicken over the head, whatever whatever ritual I need to do, I'm down with. But yeah, this happens with live shows, folks. It hasn't happened for a while. I think we got spoiled.
Yep.
But yeah, this is not the first time we've had a complete blowout.
Nice.
But at least that's one thing that's good. With all this experience under one roof, we can make a show happen that's still valuable for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely good.
I remember one time, Aaron, when you sent me a text saying, "Hey, how much do you know about this subject?" because our guest didn't show up, and I'm like, I could probably talk for 40 minutes on that. We filled an hour. So
we've done that. We've done that before. Hey, that's part of the fun, and we appreciate everybody sticking with us and sticking it out. And we're going to bring you some great information. Lisa is tried her hardest, and we really appreciate her efforts. Sorry that we couldn't get the audio thing sorted out to have her in. We will definitely have her back very soon to bring her stuff. But again, like we said, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Batman, as Todd calls him, Erich Campbell with us here this morning. So I will be hanging in there, guys, if that's okay with you. And I can be Eric. Eric, you be Lisa. Terri, you just be you.
I'll just be me.
Nobody
can be Lisa. That's me, man.
Yeah.
Nobody gets you, but yeah. I will do my best.
All right. Well, yeah, Lisa, we cannot fill your shoes, but we will do our best here.
Lisa should be in there on the message board just saying, "That's not what I meant, Eric." No.
Don't worry. Later, I'm fairly sure that she will tell me all the things that I didn't say today. And that is understandable.
All right. Well, let's start this off. Marshall says you guys need to do the two regular guys Bloody Mary version. I think we've probably done that before. That 300th episode at Dax Chicago.
I wasn't there for it, but yeah.
No, you were there in spirit, and we were there in spirits.
We were there in spirits.
So, yeah.
I may have been a little bit toasty for the second part 2 of that program. So.
We were all feeling happy at the end of that one for sure.
All right, guys. Well, Lisa is there in the comments, and so good. She will be helping us from that end of it, and we will be bringing you all of her comments and corrections of what we say here. But Eric, I'm going to start off here. So, like an industry. Like any industry, embroiderers tend to talk in acronyms and hard to decipher terms that a newbie might not understand. And I'm reading these thinking, I don't understand these. WSS, FSL, floating, basting, tension, and tatama.
Tatami, yeah.
Tatami. Yeah, see? A newbie doesn't know what these things mean. So
true.
Help decipher, please. Translation.
All right, some translations. There's a lot of stuff that does trip up new embroiderers or people who are going back and forth between different things and embroidery. I know we have a lot of people who come back from other disciplines and start doing embroidery. And the top one on there, WSS, this is one I hear all the time. It's water soluble stabilizer. And really that's for if you're using something where you don't need stabilizer to be there forever, or if you're doing something like the next one on there, FSL, which is freestanding lace. You want a stabilizer that will wash away entirely. Water-soluble stabilizer melts away in water. There's also other kinds of soluble stabilizer, like heat-away stabilizers. And also water-soluble, there's a couple different kinds. There's a water-soluble that entirely melts away, and then there's water-soluble that leaves behind a fiber, and that's a different kind. Mostly when people talk about WSS, they're talking about water-soluble stabilizer. The other thing I see that people confuse is there's actually a water-soluble topping. Right? People talk toppings. They're like, toppings? What is this, like nuts on a sundae? No. Topping is a layer that you put down on top of the garment before you start embroidering on it. And there's water-soluble layers for that are thin films that don't work well, and they don't hold up when you use them as water-soluble stabilizers unless you put tons of layers of the stuff together. And it's not very economical. It doesn't work all that well. So that's one of the ones I see people get tripped up a lot. WSS. Now, the other ones we have on here, floating. This is another one that we don't always hear very much in the commercial world, but more in the home world. Floating is when you don't actually hoop solidly the material that you're working on. Usually you have the hoop, it's 2 tension hoops, and they press together, and it holds tension all the way around the fabric. And that's also, especially in the commercial world, very common that we all hoop everything. But floating is when you use like an adhesive backing, or you stitch down, or some other way hold down the fabric on top of the stabilizer. And this causes a ton of fights, especially in the more home and art world of this thing. People go floating versus hooping all the time. I'm going to weigh on this as a commercial user. And for me, I don't float a lot, but I'm
Okay.
used to using commercial hoops. The one thing you see in the home market, most of the hoops are rectangular or square, and they lose tension on the long sides. The corners are where all the tension is held. So I'm not surprised that a lot more people float. And the other thing they do when they float is the other term on there, basting. It's using these long stitches that are easy to remove to stitch down the material of the garment before you stitch down the actual design. So floating, basting, they all go together. And
Basting, okay.
that's so people can throw down that material, they sew it down with basting stitches, and then they run the embroidery in it, and the basting stitches hold it to the stabilizer and keep it more stable when you're floating. So these are, like I said, these are the things that really catch people up. You don't see a lot of floating in the commercial world, but with the mostly round hoops we use, they have tension all the way around the outside edge, and I think that's probably why we don't see the need to do the floating and adhesive dance that you do more often in the home and craft markets.
Okay.
So that's that. And then the last ones that we have on that specific list, tensions. Tensions are just something that everybody has to deal with. The tension is the tension on the top thread and the bottom thread. I'm making this little symbol here because what we have is the top thread actually goes down behind the actual surface of the fabric, and there's bobbin. You want to have thirds on a satin stitch. 1/3 of color, 1/3 in the center of bobbin, and 1/3 of color from the top. So tensions, that's another thing. People usually know what they mean, but the tension is just making sure that there's a balance so that you have the right amount of thread going to the back, not too much to the front. It's not loopy on the top. And so you have bobbin tension, which is controlled both by a spring and a screw that adjusts it. Most of the time when bobbin tension goes bad, it's because there's some dirt or lint or something built up under the flat spring that holds the tension on the thread. Or you have top tension issues, and that's with all the dials. Too many people start twiddling the dials when there are tension problems, when honestly, most of it happens in the bobbin, especially if you have it happening on multiple needles. And that last one that we had a great deal of fun with, tatami.
I was nowhere close.
Nope, you might have missed that one. Tatami is actually a type of fill stitch. And the reason it's called tatami is that it looks like a tatami mat, which is a Japanese straw mat. And it's a pattern that looks woven to a degree. And a classic fill pattern is usually a tatami pattern. Now, there are many patterns in fill stitches, and the patterns are just how the lines of stitch penetrations are spaced to each other. But the tatami pattern is really a classic one. But what it reminds me of, the way you said tatami when we first started up, is people cannot pronounce the Japanese names of most machines.
Yes.
I cannot tell you how many people have said, I got one of those Tajami machines. I'm like, Tajima? Tajima. Okay. I think I know what you're talking about. So yeah.
Maybe it's an off-brand. Maybe it's an off-brand.
There's a lot of off-brand out there. So it could be. I've had a couple of people who say, oh yeah, I've got this machine and I have no clue what it is. Somebody has gone to I guess the wish.com school of sourcing, and they frequently have something that's a little off-brand.
Nice.
But so those are most of the acronyms and terms. I find what trips up new embroiderers the most isn't just the acronyms, but that there's actually kind of so much different information out there about how to do these things. Like I said with the water-soluble stabilizer, there is both a film out there that's a clear film, looks very much like plastic that melts away, and then there's another one that looks like standard stabilizer, like fiber that melts away, and they're both WSS. Okay. If people aren't specific, it does confuse these new folks. And it's the same way with a lot of this stuff. It's that people tell you how to do something, don't always give you the why, and definitely don't always give you the what.
Yeah. So I wanted to, Lisa's got a comment here to share, and I want to make sure we get to all these because I know a lot of people tuned in to see Lisa, but you're still going to hear from Lisa. So she says, yes, floating can be easy, but you have to remember that the only, all caps, only thing stable is the hooped stabilizer.
Absolutely.
So attach your items to the stable hooped item.
Yes.
So there we go. There's great stuff from Lisa, and she's not even on the video. Man, she's a rock star. Can bring the heat from anywhere. And then Christine Shreve says the H test for bobbin tension.
Yes, so, the H test. So an H test, if you guys don't know, when you sew big satin stitch H's, and it's just so you have a horizontal and a vertical view of that tension when you look at the back. That test of thirds that I told you about is when you look at the back of a satin stitch on an embroidered object.
Nice. And then Eric, this is, we're just curious about your experience here. When I think of basting and floating. I think of good times with Terri and Aaron on a Saturday night at cold beers and cheeseburgers. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yeah, we've experienced some nights at cold beer and cheeseburgers, but 100% less embroidery than I'm used to.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
All right.
Though I'm sure everybody has been thoroughly basted.
Well, I'm curious who made the decision. Let's call that tatami because that looks like a Japanese mat pattern. What? Who knew that in the first place?
Well, a lot of the technology, a lot of the embroidery technology comes out of Japan that we understand. It really goes for everything. I'm sure that's what it is. But yeah, trust me, there are so many terms for things. When I teach, I often stop and go, okay, when I'm talking about a satin stitch, steel stitch, column stitch, I have to use every software's version of it to tell people, because I can watch little groups light up because I can see that their software's term is being used. So admittedly, that's the other thing that happens with all these application terms is that they're not universal. And when you teach across the board theory and not just button pushing in one kind of software, you can end up with issues. But tatami is pretty universal at this point.
Okay. All right.
It's another world, man.
we're gonna get this though, Terri. We're gonna get this.
Every time you say durometer, just remember.
True enough.
Every time you talk about how stiff a squeegee is, and nobody else knows what the heck you're talking about, that's what it is.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. I know. I just learned screen knuckles the other day. The knuckles on the weave of a screen. I laughed my butt off the first time I heard that. Make sure your emulsion covers all the knuckles. I was like,
that was on the show last week. You're correct.
Oh, yeah.
Look at you learning screen printing terms.
I need to go to that Atlas class.
It's tomorrow. All right. Well, hey, let's. You mentioned applique. So what exactly is applique, and is it the same as creating a patch? And another note that you'd written here for us is rip away applique.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
tell us everything we ever wanted to know about applique.
Now, we don't have time for everything you ever want to know. Well, everything you wanted to know about applique probably might not be that bad, but applique is whenever you're applying a fabric to a garment. Now, here's the other thing about this. There's applique and reverse applique. Applique is when you apply fabric to the front of the garment, stitch it down, and then put a covering stitch around the outside edge. But reverse applique is when you apply fabric to the back of a garment and cut out the surface of the garment itself. And that can be done, especially in the commercial world. We see it done more on larger scale with lasers, but in the home market, you'll see people hand cut stuff. And actually, I've hand cut even commercially, which, by the way, I charge a great deal for. So everybody remember, if you do a bunch of hand work, charge for it, please.
Yes.
But yes, you can do applique or reverse applique. And here's the thing. Applique is very similar to creating a patch if you're using what I like to call a soluble method. And that's where you put a water-soluble stabilizer or some other kind of stabilizer that can tear away or leave you a clean edge. And you essentially put a material down, sew it down, sew on the design, or you've pre-stitched the design on some material, and you put your cuts on top of that soluble stabilizer and sew your edge so that you don't have to do a traditional overlock or marrowed edge to edge your patches. So in that way, applique can be a lot like creating a patch. But in general, what it is to take a piece of material you're either going to cut later or that is pre-cut and stitching it down as a decorative element on a garment. So anytime you see in the commercial world, especially in team sports jerseys that have the big letters on them, baseball jerseys especially, football jerseys, anything that has letters across the back, that's applique material. That's usually pre-cut. You run a placement stitch, you put a tack down stitch on it, maybe you cover the edge with a satin or some other sort of covering stitch, and that's how you do your applique. But yeah, very similar to creating a patch. Now, rip away applique is something that's been, I would call it new, but that's because I've been around too long. Over the last few years, people have used essentially heat transfer vinyl as an applique. And what you can do is you lay down a placement stitch like you would with a standard applique, showing the area where you want your applique material. Throw down this heat transfer vinyl. A lot of people are doing it with the glitter flake was a big deal for a long time, and it's still a great way to put a lot of bling into a design. And then when you stitch out your satin stitch borders that cover the edge, but you leave it whole cloth, you don't pre-cut it, and you can tear away that heat transfer vinyl close to that outside edge and then press the stuff that's left over on the inside, and it looks very much like traditional applique. And frankly, even regular heat transfer vinyls, the fun thing is, with the addition of the embroidery, it tends to look a little bit like you've done a leather applique because of the sheen being similar. So you can have a really cool look to this kind of semi-printed setup without doing pre-cutting, which is just the bane of our existence. When you're doing applique, if you don't have like a laser bridge machine where you can cut it on the machine and do it easily, then what you're doing is pre-cutting everything and then sticking down, placing something, usually with a temporary adhesive, or if you're somebody working commercially and you've got, like, say, a pressure-sensitive twill that already has an adhesive on it, if you're lucky, then you can stick that down to the garment. And then you're running a tack down and hoping that everything stays stuck down the right way you want it to before you start running your cover stitches on the edge. So rip away applique allows us to do that with heat transfer materials. Does mean you have to hit it with a heat press afterwards and be careful about tearing on the inside edge. But it does mean you don't have to do any of that pre-cutting and mess that you usually have to do with traditional applique.
See, a screen printer would call that simulated applique. All my screen printing friends are out there laughing right now.
I'm sure. All of you screen printers, you 5 of us who tuned in to watch the applique of the embroidery. Right?
Hey, I say every day, we are not a screen printer, we're not an embroiderer, we're not a sublimator, we are decorators, and we all need to know all about this stuff. And
Exactly.
said if you can teach Terri and I about this stuff, you and Lisa, I think you can kind of drop the mic and walk away. So I feel like I'm learning a lot here. So for sure. So Lisa says for the home market, we use HTV, which is another acronym, heat transfer vinyl, as our rip away applique. So good stuff there. Christine
Absolutely.
Shreve chimed in and says applique is big on kids' clothes.
Absolutely.
All the cute little animals and stuff on kids' shirts. A lot of that is applique. So there we go.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing to realize with applique, it reduces stitch counts. So it's great to use to also cover large areas, and you can even use it under things. I know I've used it under materials, and like a patch company, back in the day, you could have a patch company do a partial cover, so you get a little bit of texture on an area, but it's still the color of the fabric showing through. And I've done that several times with applique on a traditional piece, just to say, like I have a big jacket back that has a slab of color, and I don't want to stitch the entire thing. You can drop that color, that amount of stitching down by using an applique under it and using a 50% or less fill just to give it a little bit of embroidery texture on the top. So it's also used to reduce the amount of stitches and make garments less stiff, because applying that on the cover, it covers the back. You apply that on top of the garment and you get that coverage without all the stitching through the garment. People don't think about 3D distortion, which is all the threads inside of your fully figured garment. It's completely woven. All the threads are there, or otherwise it would be see-through. When you put those threads through, it causes warping and dishing, stuff like that. Applique can help you stop that because that color layer is not through your bottom garment, only the edge.
Nice.
So applique has a lot of great uses.
Awesome. Yeah, Lisa says, just remember with HTV, heat transfer vinyl, you use the protective sheet when pressing. With fabric, we use HNBL. There's another acronym. Heat and bond light, which won't attach to the iron afterwards. So thank you, Lisa. Yes, keep that stuff coming, Lisa. Don't go anywhere. We need you here still. So
there are many kinds of heat activated adhesives, and that's one of those ones that is often used, especially in like the home and craft market. That's one of those brand names that, like Kleenex, ends up being a title all of its own there. So yeah, heat and bond light you hear a lot.
Cool. All right. So let's see here, Eric. New embroiderers often stress about the settings themselves up to digitize and debate brands back and forth. I've heard a few embroiderers that never digitized at all. Do you think most embroiderers need digitizing software, or is customized software enough? What are the key differences?
Well, first thing, absolutely. And this is something I have a problem with because I want to control the machines. I am a digitizer, through and through. I started out on my own and learned on my own specifically because I wanted to control the machines down to the nth. However, I learned in my career that there's tons of embroiderers who never want to touch it. A favorite embroiderer of mine, who I'm going to call out, Jane Swansea in Houston, Texas, Swan Threads, done almost her entire career, like decades, no digitizing until like this year, and she just finally gave in and wanted to play with it. You can do everything that you need to do, usually through digitizers, hiring things out, and having customizing software. Now, customizing software, the difference between that and digitizing software, customizing software is going to let you composite multiple designs together, add text to them, rotate size. If you've got software that has like what I'm going to call stitch consciousness, if it understands how to resize and refactor stitches well, you've got software that does that, then you can do some resizing of stock designs, even if you don't have the original working files, if you have only a stitch file. But generally, customizing software is going to be enough for a lot of people. If you can do name drops and you can put in your digitized logo and preview it and do that kind of work. And if you have software that does some sort of stitch processing, you may be able to do some small amount of resizing. That does a lot for a lot of people. You don't have to jump right into digitizing when you first start. And there's nothing wrong at all with outsourcing your digitizing while you're learning. So if you have a period of time where it's like you want to learn to digitize, you really want to get into it, but you're not sure that you're going to be able to do it, but you're already working, you want to get up to speed, there's nothing wrong with digitizing while someone else is doing it. Also, if you've got a good digitizer you're hiring on, or that you're working from their files, you'll be able to look at their files and decipher them, analyze them. I know I've written several articles about analyzing files, because then you can take their settings and use them in your own work. And you can watch those designs run on the machines. Watching a design run on the machine on fabric is the best education for embroidery that there is. So definitely get out there, check that out first. You don't always need digitizing software just to get started. Now, honestly, I think a lot of people, you'd love to have it, but the worst reason to do it, there's two bad reasons to do it. Number one, because someone told you have to. Because somebody's trying to sell you a package deal with a machine. That's a bad go. So you don't have to digitize, even if it comes with the machine for free. It doesn't mean you have to do the work. And the second reason is because I don't want to pay someone else to do it. It's just the worst idea ever. It's an absolute skill set, and it's something I always tell my art director in the design department where I started. When I first started really getting into digitizing, and they moved me from being just an operator on the machines up to the art room, and I started to work mostly out of the art room. He stopped, and the guy had never said an earnest word to me, and stopped and said, "I'm so glad you're doing this. They wanted me to learn this. I looked at it, and it was an entire career unto itself." And I took that in when he said it. And this is a guy who's been doing excellent screen print separations. He's a talented artist. He has an art degree, and he looked at this thing and said, nope. So digitizing is not super easy. It's not. You can do it, and people have taken it on. In fact, I want to call out also somebody who's in the comments, Jo Rita Wagner. She's somebody who's been talking to me online on Facebook about digitizing and learned, and she did awesome work getting up to speed very quickly. You can, if you're the kind of person who wants to do it, but you don't have to do it. And if you don't find you're the kind of person who wants to move stitches around and see what they do in the machine and, kind of play around with experiments, it's okay to not digitize, and it's okay to not digitize immediately. Yeah. So, get into it knowing what you're doing. And I'd say, in the home market, I see more people doing it because those people are really expressing themselves. And I think they come up from this idea of expression and craft and art. I think some of the commercial folks who do it, when they don't like it, it's the worst thing. You'll see an embroiderer who doesn't like it, who thinks pushing stitches around is boring, and they're doing it because they don't want to pay somebody the, hopefully $30 plus for the left chest, and that's cheap. And usually $5 because they're using probably some, off-label service to get it done. So guys, don't do it for cost.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So Lisa says our new top of the line home machines have lots of onboard editing, and some have digitizing. I would much rather use software to customize. Yeah. So good stuff there. And Marion says I don't digitize, but no good digitizing when I see it. Been in business for 17 years.
So look at that. That's 17 years of good work without digitizing it. Like I said, I like everybody to have it. I think there's nothing wrong about having digitizing software and getting the ability to do it. I think everybody should, when they get into embroidery long enough, they should at least have the software and give it a go, and especially being able to do some editing and customizing. But folks, you don't have to start there, and you don't definitely have to be a digitizer to embroider if you want to embroider.
Yeah, yep. And Lisa says, in digitizing on the machine is aligned with auto digitizing, and I prefer to be the artist, not give the power to the computer. So great stuff going on in the comments here. So if you're catching this on the podcast version, make sure you get over to our Facebook page at facebook.com/2regularguys. That's the number 2. There, we got it in there. Number 2 regular guys. Tons of great information about, what people are doing themselves, how they're doing this, what's going on there. So we've even got there you go. You digitize if you're a micromanager type.
There's someone who's been one of my students, Nida. Yeah, you're right. If you're a control freak, you might want to digitize, and no comment about me being a control freak.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Terry, let's keep going here.
We do have a show next week on management, so everybody tune in. Micromanaging might be part of it. So
might have to write that down in my calendar, Terry. Well, good thing I'm producing
software, and this goes across several different methods of decoration. There's a term called dongle that makes people giggle when they first hear it. What's a dongle, and why does it matter?
Okay, so let's get on the on dongles, which is something I'll never say again. But yeah, a dongle is usually it's a security device, right? It's a security device. Usually these days it's USB. Back when I started, they had ones that went in a parallel port. If you know what that is, I'm sorry, and I hope your knees don't hurt as bad as mine. But right now, it's usually a USB device, looks a lot like a USB thumbstick that has to be plugged into your machine for you to run software. And like Terry said, there's a lot of different decorating software and other software that requires these dongles. Right. It's something that you'll hear in the Brilliance ad. One of the reasons they're kind of proud of the fact they have no dongles is because people do really have trouble with the things. And often, if you have a dongle for your software, if you lose it or break it, the replacement costs are pretty high.
Yeah.
So even if you're registered with your software company, there's usually a fairly high cost to the point where there is such a thing as dongle insurance, which I'm sure is going to cause another round of laughter out there. You can insure your dongle because it's important. But yeah, that's another thing that people have. They will literally insure them or will pay for this service called dongle insurance so that if they lose the thing, they can get a new one assigned and locked to their software so that they'll be able to open it. What this also usually means is you can only run on one device. You can't split that thing between different places. And so people who decide to either digitize at home or on the road or next to a machine and then also in an office, they either have to have 2 copies of the software fully licensed, or they will have to take their dongle back and forth with them and they risk wearing it out. So you're also here's another term I don't want to say again. People will also have a dongle leash, they'll often call it, which is where they'll have something tied to the back of it and they'll have a little whip on the end of it. The whip is actually just another extension of USB cable so that they don't wear out the plugging it in and out of the machines as they move back and forth between their stations. Hence why when software doesn't have a dongle, people say, hey, why is it important to say we have no dongles? Because you can run on more than one station and you don't have to do this dance of insuring, plugging in and out, carrying the thing out, and having a case for your dongle that you carry around. I know. Christine is right. We all sound like we're 10 or 12. If you're at any of the two other guys gatherings, yeah, we sometimes sound like we're a bunch of 12-year-olds. But yeah, dongles. That's what they are. Security hard lock is a nice word you could use if you wanted to, but that's not what anybody's going to call it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, there's again, great stuff coming from the regulators, the folks tuning in, and not only funny, but good information as well. So thanks for getting through the dongle portion of this program for us, Eric. That was good.
I tried to maintain a professional distance from that.
All right. Well, let's talk about another software term folks may not be using correctly. Updates and upgrades. What's the difference between the two, and how do you decide to set up to new tools?
Well, here's the difference. An update is generally just a software update. It means there's been some improvements made. It doesn't always mean there's new features or something being added to the software. When you're updating, usually it just means that there's just something new. Maybe there could be corrections or security problems or something else. Okay, I just saw the comments. I'm sorry. I'm laughing. You have to get it. Sorry, dongle insurance is true. I love this. There's Marshall. Yes, there is really dongle insurance. Go look it up.
Well, Marshall started out with holy crap.
Yeah, that's Marshall. So, yeah, but updating and upgrading. When you update your software, it could be anything from security updates to work with a new operating system, stuff like that, or fixes that are going on could be in an update, but it could also have new features added to it if the software you're using decides to provide new features when they do updates. Often they do, especially on big yearly updates. Yeah. Upgrading is often adding another function or adding a different level. Depending on the software you're using, you may have either separate pieces of software that have different functions that work together, like a suite of software or a platform, or you may have software that has add-ons or modules, and those can be considered upgrades to some degree, or they have levels where you'll have usually multiple arcane names. One's designer, one's extra designer, one's awesome art man. I don't know. There's usually some ridiculous illustrator and whatever. There's a bunch of usually names for what these levels are that everybody has to ask 15 times what they mean. Or if you're lucky, there's numbers, so you can just tell which level you're on. But these are usually levels that have more functionality. Like let's say you start out and level 1 has satin stitches, fill stitches, and some motif stitches, and a couple of tools, and that's about it. It does basic embroidery, nothing else. Level 2 adds some graphical operators or something, or adds some different tools or different stitch types that you didn't have before. Level 3 has automation, has some team naming, something else. That kind of stuff is usually there. Or you'll have discrete modules where you'll buy the core software and it does most of the basic stuff you need. But then you'll be able to say, okay, well, I really do want that spiral fill. I really do want that extra border option. I really do want to do font creation. And that's an additional cost on top of the software itself, which is something you should actually look at when you're purchasing software. Does it have the features you want? And even if it does, or talks about those features, shows those features in videos, go find out which level those are on and if you need another module to make it happen. Because you might not be looking at the final actual price of the software when they tell you, yeah, level 2 is this. You go, okay, cool. Level 2 is that. Do they have modules? And will you need those modules to do your work? So definitely check that out when you're looking to buy software. So that's the general difference between updates and upgrades. How do you decide when you step up to new tools? There's 2 ways to think about this. Either you need the tools because you already have something that you have like a market for them. Let's say that you're not doing your own applique, but you've got a lot of applique stuff you've been doing. You're hiring out, you're having cut files that are used for a cutter made. Maybe you're having that and the embroidery files made and sent to you, and you eventually go, I need to have applique functionality because I already have a market. I'm doing team sports, I'm doing kids wear. I need to be able to do applique quickly instead of doing it manually with the tools that I currently have. That's a good reason to step up. Or you can step up by selling. You can say, I want to sell into this market, so I'm going to get the tools that let me do that.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff there.
Well, the question here is about people using big words, and they may or may not understand them. I just spoke to someone at a trade show a week ago who said, well, in my current business, I do sublimation. And my question to her was, do you?
But do you really?
Because surely if you do it, you've heard it correctly.
That's one of ours too.
What are some of the embroidery terms that get misused? Do you have any pet peeves on this, Eric?
Yeah, one that we're going to talk about really quickly here, conversion later. There's no conversion, but we'll talk about that in a second. Also, like sublimation, people say digitalizing. They say, I need my logo digitalized. And I'm like, okay. And that's not one of my favorites. But for my glossary, I don't know. My pet peeve, I was hoping to get Lisa to talk about this one because she actually has more experiences than this. I'm usually up at the front of the office. She's often down in the group with the people. But I think for me, it really probably is conversion, which we're going to talk about. Yeah, Lisa put it on there, digitalization. I love that. We're on the same wavelength, Lisa. That is one of my least favorite. So yeah, I don't like when people say we're going to convert a file. It's the worst.
Convert a file.
So yeah, you're not going to convert a graphical file into a DST file. I know that's what we were about. That's literally, I'm preempting the next question talking about that.
I know. I know. All right. Well, I was going to see what else Lisa had for us too, but yeah, there's some great comments coming here. I hate every time someone says sublimation. Yeah. All right. So good
it's
stuff.
Pretty cringy. Yeah. No.
All right. I know you were leading me, Eric, and I was dragging my feet, but how do I convert a JPEG to a DST file? let's talk some auto digitization there. Digitalization. Yeah, all of those fun words. I know I'm half intentional, but I'm learning too. So I'm trying to use the right words here. Go ahead, Eric. Help me out.
I'm going to start by saying DST file. When someone says DST file to you, there's another set of terms we can work with real quickly. There's a working file in embroidery, and then there's a stitch file for embroidery, right?
Okay.
The working file is like a vector object file. Okay. It has shapes that you have settings defined to that you draw that you can edit and change and resize almost infinitely because it reprocesses stitches from the instructions in that file. Then there's the stitch file, which a DST is a standard kind of stitch file. It's actually a Tajima standard that's become the standard for the industry. All it has is stitch coordinates and some functions. That's the file the machine actually understands. You can't send a working file to the machine, but also a stitch file, when you go to edit it, only has individual stitches in it, none of the shapes you drew and none of your settings, literally just the places where the needle will land. So a stitch file, a DST file, only has stitches in it. It's also why you can't resize them infinitely unless you have software that can interpret that into something else. So that's what that is. So auto-digitizing is my least favorite thing probably on earth. Everybody says, why can't we just convert a file? Well, digitizing is not just a process of conversion. You have to redraw shapes, and things like stitch angle don't exist in a graphical file. You can't set a stitch angle. It's a choice that's made by a digitizer, and you can render the same image multiple different ways. That one of the things I often do, if I have a big flat silhouette, say I have a silhouette of a person that's solid and it's one color, I will often carve their clothing and their head and hands or something else into different shapes so that I get some texture on it, because embroidery is all about texture. Auto-digitizing can only take a shape and fill it with stitches and assign a stitch type and an angle for any given shape. It can't see what's not there, whereas a digitizer might choose to make different choices about texture, about the sequence and the design, and a digitizer will make conscious choices about things like overlapping objects so that when there's push and pull, which is the standard things that happen under tension, stitches get shorter, stacks of stitches get longer. When there's push and pull distortion, they can compensate for this stuff so that you don't get gaps on the machine and you don't have circles turning into ovals. So that stuff is all done by a digitizer. If you use auto-digitizing, you're taking in an image and it's essentially like auto-tracing for vector. It finds all the edges of everything and then fills objects with a rough choice of what stitches the software thinks should fill that kind of area. Not real great on stitch angles, and it definitely can't do anything artistic with the texture because it doesn't understand things in 3 dimensions the way a digitizer can. So auto-digitizing, does it have place in our tools? A little bit. You can use it for simple stuff. You're going to have to learn about embroidery and do the editing yourself, but the auto-digitizing is just not going to be as artistic or as clean or likely as functional as you're going to get out of what a digitizer does manually. And honestly, what we do is like the big bad days where you had a giant tablet on the wall that was 4 feet wide and you're punching every individual stitch. That's how it used to be back in the day. Now we draw an area, we set a stitch type, and we set some angles, and we go through some settings on that specific shape so that we can generate the stitches. It's not as bad as it used to be. So for us, we have a lot of automation already. Auto-digitizing can be used to start something, but it's never a conversion process where you're just going to dump a JPEG in it and spit out good-looking embroidery. Maybe with something incredibly simple, you might get closer, but even then, what it does is what we often like to call coloring book embroidery, which is where you have a design that has thick outlines and filled areas, and it looks like a coloring book because it can't decide these nuanced things about those boundaries.
Nice.
So yeah, auto-digitizing, is there a place for it? There's some automation that can be done, but the best digitizing and the best embroidery is always going to come from somebody who's doing it consciously.
Gotcha.
So in summation, auto-digitizing is not magic. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's no magic. It turns out, as much as I would like to be replaced by the machines, and Skynet is coming, they have not yet got the intricacies of embroidery down.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Couple things. Marshall, see your questions in there. That's a whole nother show for a whole nother time. So we'll come back to that. He's talking about pricing with embroidery. So if you want to go get involved in that conversation with Marshall, though, make sure you're at the Facebook page. You can start that conversation up there. Lisa does say, and converting a running stitch to a satin stitch in DST to PES file, there are no controls for this. So Eric, help us out.
DST file is, like I said, machine is a stitch file. PES file is a brother branded file that is often in the home market. When you have a running stitch is just a line of stitches. Sometimes people call it a walking stitch. People want to take a border and convert it, but the thing is, there's no beginning or ending to the shape, and it's not a vector shape. So there's nowhere for you to take that file and assign stitches to this shape. The shape doesn't exist. Individual stitch points exist. So people always say, hey, I've got this file, this stock file, I downloaded it, and I want to add a border to it. The only way to do that is to take it into digitizing software and draw the border by hand. You can't grab a segment of it and convert it, at least not with any ease. And even if you do try and grab those stitch points out of it, it gets you poor embroidery, because it's like somebody who instead of drawing beautiful Bezier curves in their vector would drop little points all around the edge of something, so your control points are terrible.
Gotcha.
So even if you can use stuff that does auto conversion, you really can't work into a stitch file without taking pieces out and redigitizing chunks anyway. I found that most of the time when I had to make an edit on someone else's stitch file, I just didn't tell them and I would recreate it from scratch. because it was faster than trying to add something into someone else's stitch file. As a digitizer, I would just say, yep, we can do that. Make sure the pricing was right for the company, and I would just redigitize it anyway.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. All right. Well, we're going to be in bonus time. In fact, we just clicked over because we started a couple minutes late. But Terri, let's wrap this up with the last question for Erich. And
yeah, Erich, let's and you embroiderers, you have a word for everything. And it's a word I don't understand. but
we're a lot further along today than we
indeed,
ever were. So,
indeed. Yeah. But Erich, let's talk a little bit about fonts. What's the difference between a true type font and embroidery fonts? And you also talk about keyboard fonts, stitch-based keyboard fonts. Break it all down for us. In a matter of, I don't know, a minute.
A minute. All right. Well, I'll try and go as fast as I can. Some software will take a true type font, which is a font that we would use for print or desktop publishing, whatever you want to call it. And that's just an outside vector shape, and it fills with, it fills naturally with color when you put it on something, but that's all it is. An embroidery font is either an object-based font or a stitch-based font that actually can be used inside of embroidery software. And it only is used in embroidery software and doesn't contain usually these full outlines of the entire shape of a letter. It has individual parts or it has stitches in it. So embroidery fonts, the two kinds you'll have are object-based keyboard fonts. And what we call them keyboard fonts, by the way, this is embroidery history. Back in the day, they called them keyboard fonts because there would literally be a electrical unit on the side of your machine with a big keyboard on it. And then when you type on the keyboard, it would literally set this up on the machine and sew out right there. And that was the first kind of keyboard fonts were stored on literally like big circuit boards you slotted into your machine. But after that, what we call the keyboard fonts now, it's any font that you can type on instead of moving in individual letter designs. You'll see, especially in the home market, people will have pre-digitized designs of individual letters and literally drag each one in to compositing software and lay them out to make their type, to make a name or a text. Well, whereas you have instead keyboard fonts, which allows you to type them on the keyboard like you would in any other sort of publishing or art software. The difference between object-based and stitch-based, some software will have a stitch-based keyboard font, meaning that, like I talked about those working files versus stitch files, you'll have each individual letter is actually just a collection of stitch data. It doesn't have any objects in it. It doesn't have any outlines or vectors. It doesn't regenerate. It's just at the size it is with the stitches that were originally output from the software that was created in. So it's just stitches. No other data, can't be resized, or at least can't be resized without reprocessing it. And that's a stitch-based keyboard font. You can still type it, but you can't resize it. You can't do any deformation to it. You can't play with it, right? Whereas an object-based keyboard font, you can do more deformation too. Now, like I said, stitch-based keyboard fonts, some software can do deformations and resizing if it can process it. Not all software can do that. But the other ones, the object-based keyboard fonts, are very much like a working file. They have outlines. The thing about an embroidery font, though, is you may have 5 or 6 different shapes in like the letter A. The crossbar, the 2 legs, maybe the vertex on top, the 2 serifs at the bottom are individual shapes that have to be drawn and aren't one big letter. They're not one big vector shape. So in an object-based keyboard font, each one of those letters may be made up of 5 to 10 shapes. Who knows how many shapes, depending on if it's a decorative font. Yeah. And those are all there and can be resized and regenerated. The stitch types are assigned, stitch angles are assigned to each one of those objects. And when you scale it, the software then goes back and goes, okay, I know it's supposed to have this many stitches per inch or this much density, and it will refill that with stitches again. It'll reprocess it live. And those can be they can be not only resized, but you can often break them into objects themselves and then edit individual pieces and change the outlines of those vector objects essentially that are in that file. Whereas the stitch-based keyboard fonts are just a collection of stitches, like I talked about before, just coordinates where the needle's going to drop on each stitch. Yeah. And those don't have nearly as much ability to be played with.
All right. Well, that was almost a minute, Terri. It was maybe a little bit longer, but
I tried, man. That is a really complicated thing.
You did really good. All right, cool. Well, here's the deal, guys. Erich, phenomenal job filling in. Obviously, if we could have found somebody that was a little more passionate about embroidery, I don't know, but no, this guy.
I am a little burned out.
Unbelievable. This great information. Thank you so much, Erich. Lisa, you are awesome, and we are going to make this happen. So I've got a way that we need to kind of re-record this show too, not re-record it, but record it again with her take, and obviously want you involved with that. So I've got a way that we can do that, not through a live video, so that way we make sure there's no issues and stuff like that. So Lisa, we will talk about this stuff, and I can't wait to get more of your take, and I appreciate you being in the chat to help us out here. I want to make sure everybody gets and checks out her website here, because there's a ton of fantastic information. It's scrolling across the bottom. It's sew-bubbles.com. And I'm actually going to see, I'll put it up on screen here as well, so you can kind of take a look. So please make sure you get over there, check that out. Tell her you heard about her from the Two Regular Guys, but just make sure you check it out. She's got a YouTube channel, award winner, Reggie Award winner. So all sorts of stuff. She's got free stuff. Hello, Lisa. Awesome free stuff. Good stuff there. So make sure to check her out, but we will have her back very soon here, and we'll make this happen. So Eric, how about you?
I would love to mention, she's got in the comments here real quickly, just say she also does these really great after hours embroidery things on Monday nights.
Okay.
I'm often in the comments kind of producing, as I often do with our shows, where I'll be there kind of helping out too. But she does these great things where she's just super lively, gets on there. She's excited about embroidery and shares all the stuff that she might be doing. Usually it's in Embroidery software, but she does talk about embroidery and digitizing, and it's great to check her out. And she also enjoys the occasional adult beverage while she's on screen.
Good.
So she's loose and has a lot of fun.
Oh,
and I
perfect.
think everybody should check that out.
Perfect. She says, yeah, I'm teaching in Chicago Deco Summit in Brisbane, Australia. So that's awesome. So check out her schedule over there at sew-bubbles.com/education. And then the Monday nights thing there at her Facebook page at sewbubbles. So facebook.com/sewbubbles. And she says, channel the inner Two Regular Guys with my after hours embroidery. Beer plus embroidery equals what could be better other than a Bloody Mary. So good stuff. Excellent. All right, Eric. Well, thank you, sir. And we will catch up with you again soon. And back to work there, sir.
If I can plug one more thing real quick.
Absolutely.
I'm also hosting a webinar next week. I'd love you guys to check it out with Madeira USA. So next week, 2 p.m. Eastern on the 28th of August. It's you can get the link. We'll go ahead and put that in the show notes, but it's bit.ly/EMBMAD, EMBMAD, to register for the limited live seats for that. So, and that one's all about starting embroidery business, especially going from kind of the prosumer world to the commercial world. So if you guys want to hear more about that, since I saw there were some questions there that are about business and about how to get yourself set up, definitely jump in there next Wednesday, and I'm doing an hour, and they give me all the questions even if we can't get to them, and I actually put a written list of all those questions out and all the answers that everybody gets if you sign up. So even if you can't make it, sign up, you'll get the recording later, and you'll get all my answers.
Perfect. Excellent. All right. Perfect. And we've got it at the bottom of the screen there. So sign up for that, and got it in the comments as well. And like Eric said, it will be in the show notes. So Eric, high five, dude. Thank you very much.
Wasn't Lisa, but I'm happy to help.
Well, you channeled your inner Lisa very well, so we appreciate it. All right, Eric. We'll talk to you soon.
See you later, guys.
Terri, good times. What did you learn?
All kinds of terminology. My problem was some of the explanations used terminology that I didn't know. So, no, it's super interesting and great that we had the opportunity to have somebody fill in with such detailed information. So Eric did a great job.
Yes, he definitely did. And again, thanks to Lisa for hanging out and keeping in the comments there. And like I said, we will make that happen to get her back. I know a lot of people wanted to see Lisa and hear from her, but you can check her out at all those places that were mentioned. We'll get that all up into the show notes as well. Terri, so let's talk about, we're going to flip the script one more time here because why not? But
why not?
Yeah,
exactly.
What do you have coming up here?
All right. Well, I'll be tomorrow I'll be in Chicago teaching.
You can be late for the plane.
My complete screen printing business course. Yeah, that's going to be it's been sold out for a couple of weeks anyway. So, but September 11th, I'll be in Columbus, Ohio, hosting the Equipment Zone DTG class, and I'll be working in the Equipment Zone booth there in Columbus at NBM Columbus, September 12th through 14th. I'm going to be in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey with Equipment Zone for their DTG Academy on September 19th and 20th. And some other upcoming screen printing classes. I'll be in Nashville with Atlas Screen Supply on October 26th and 27th. Back in Phoenix with Workhorse Products on November 2nd and 3rd. And all my upcoming 2019 and 2020 events are on terrycombs.com. Aaron, I knew you'd like to hear that.
I love it. Terry, I'm so proud of you, buddy. Good job.
How about you, Aaron? What do you have going?
Well, first off, I wanted to just hit this comment here real quick. Missed most of the podcast, dang, but couldn't be helped. Hopefully a broadcast will be available. Jan, you can check out the show right here at the Facebook page, facebook.com/2regularguys. This video will be available. Plus, you can also catch it via our podcast version. So if you want to listen to the car, listen in the shop while you're embroidering or screen printing or whatever, you can do that as well. So 2regularguys.com, the number 2regularguys.com is where you can find all that. And for me, Terry, I've got a big announcement that I am excited to make. We've talked about my I'm thinking embroidery right now. we talked about my webinar called Becoming a Digital Marketing Superhero a little bit on the show. Well, I finally have the registration up and live, and we had people that signed up to get notified, and those folks have been notified. They got notified earlier in the week. But I told them I was going to make it official, announce it live to the world here on 2 Regular Guys today, and it's limited to 50 seats. So if you want to sign up, it's at the same location. It's aaronmontgomery.info/marketing. And that's nice. It scrolls funny there. But just go to aaronmontgomery.info/marketing, and you can get registered for that event coming up. It's November 11th, 2019 is when that's happening. It's a Monday, but it's Veterans Day. So I'm hoping people will have an opportunity to be off for Veterans Day. And again, limiting it to 50 people because I want it to be an interactive webinar where there's lots of opportunity for questions and answers and kind of a community interaction. And to make that happen, you have to kind of keep the group a little bit smaller. Plus, I want to be able to individually help folks after the fact or before even. And so got to keep that number manageable. So I'm limiting that to 50 people. We're already about 15% full. And it's only been a week since that was launched. So I'm really excited about this. I had a great conversation with Alan Howe yesterday about it. He actually has signed up for it and is going to be part of it. And he's excited to learn. And I'm really excited about that. So I don't want to take up too much time talking about it, but get there, check that out. If you have any questions, hit us up wherever you can find us, and I'm happy to help. I've got Small Business Saturdays happening tomorrow morning. I've been doing the 7 a.m. thing here Central Time. That's like 5 a.m. your time, Terry. But so it's pretty early, but we've had a great group of folks kind of tuning in and checking it out. So I just kind of want to keep it at that. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking a little business 101, kind of a pre-show to Eric's full webinar that he's going to be doing. So I'm hoping that I can get you guys all primed, and then Eric will give you the real information during his webinar. But you check that out over at my Facebook page, facebook.com/aaronmontgomery.info. And looking forward to having that chat tomorrow morning. And then we've talked about it, but I also want to make sure that everybody is getting signed up to get information. And I got to put the right. Oh, that's not working. I'm trying to copy and paste while I'm talking, and it's not working out so well. But the decorators community coming soon. We're working on it. We've had several chats about it. Things are getting are pretty exciting and going to be happening very soon. So you want to get over to our website at 2regularguys.com/decoratorscommunity. And let's see if I can get that onto the bottom of the screen there. Oh boy, that's way too much stuff. We're covering ourselves up. So 2regularguys.com/decoratorscommunity, all one word. And you can sign up for more information as that becomes available. I'm not sure if we call it a launch, Terry, per se, but kind of the first live introduction and kind of feeling out what it really is going to look and feel like is going to happen at ISS Fort Worth in
Right.
October 3rd through the 5th. So if you want to sign up to get more information as we have that information available, plus you'll be part of that early group, the early adopters that are helping shape what it is actually. So that's always a good place to be too. So you can get exactly the information that you want. So
Perfect.
excellent. All right, Terry. I think we've done it. Thanks so much to Eric and to Lisa for jumping in the comments and stuff. And Todd says, "I've got my spot. The rest of you can fight for the other 49." Yeah, I think there's actually only about 40 left or so. Maybe 42. So
I hear a rush for chairs and people tripping and falling.
It's like the game. All right. Well,
musical chairs. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Good stuff. Well, thanks very much to Eric. Thanks very much to Lisa. We will have her back very soon. So look for that coming soon, where we get her take on the lingo of embroidery. And
all right. And we also want to thank our sponsor, Embrilliance, and their family of products.
Excellent. Yes, and they've been great. And also next week, Terry, you and I are going to talk management, as you mentioned earlier on in the show. And are your management skills up to par? I don't know if there'll be any discussion about maybe micromanaging or
possibly so. We've witnessed it all, haven't we?
Yeah. We've been there, done that. Probably been on both sides of it. I can't say that I'm not going to be guilty of a lot of these things that we're going to be talking about. But I'm really excited for that. So just Terry and I next week. We're super excited about that.
Fantastic. All right. Until then, I'm Terry Combs. He's Aaron Montgomery.
And we are the Two Regular Guys. Thank you for listening to Two Regular Guys. Check out our website at tworegularguys.com. That's the number 2, regularguys.com. You can also interact with us over at our Facebook page, facebook.com/tworegularguys, or send us a tweet, twitter.com/tworegularguys. And we have a YouTube page. You can find all that from our website, tworegularguys.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to spending some time with you again next week.